My name is Ariel Tabson, and I will be facilitating today's event. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Tennessee Highway Safety Office, and I want to welcome everybody and thank you all, the media and everybody, for coming and attending today. Our first speaker is going to be the Director of the Tennessee Highway Safety Office, Vic Donahoe.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Vic Donahoe, the Director of the Tennessee Highway Safety Office, and it's a pleasure to be here this morning. I want to welcome you all to the Tennessee Highway Safety Office Booze It and Lose It Super Bowl event for drunk driving prevention. The THSO's mission is to change driver behavior through education and enforcement. We cannot accomplish this alone. We appreciate Nissan Stadium and the Tennessee Titans for hosting today's event. I would like to thank all the media for spreading the message. I would also like to thank many of our partners whom are here today: the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security, the Tennessee Highway Patrol, the Tennessee Association of Chiefs of Police, the Tennessee Sheriff's Association, the Tennessee Motor Vehicle Commission, the Tennessee District Attorney General's Conference, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Students Against Destructive Decisions, HCA TriStar Skyline Medical Center, Vanderbilt University Medical Center, Collegiate Life Investment Foundation, and all our local law enforcement partners who are here with us today. And lastly, I'd like to thank our special guest, Lisa Murawski, for her impact story that will be coming later in this program. Let me say, let's all work together to keep drunk drivers off our road and prevent future tragedies in Tennessee. As the game, everyone prepares for the game on Sunday, please remember that fans don't let fans drive drunk. Thank you.
All right, our next person to come to the podium is going to be the Senior Director of Broadcasting and the voice of the Titans, Mike Keith.
Thank you, and thanks for this very special opportunity to our traffic safety partners and our law enforcement partners. Welcome to Nissan Stadium, your home of the Tennessee Titans. And this is a great opportunity on what is a special weekend for football fans everywhere to remind you of something that, quite honestly, will be the most important thing I say all year, and I say a lot of things, and that is fans don't let fans drive drunk in Tennessee. The bottom line is this is a weekend where we celebrate the game of football. We enjoy family and friends. We enjoy fellowship in such a great way. You think about the time that we get to spend together enjoying the Super Bowl game, and there aren't many better times that we have getting to sit and watch a game, unless, of course, the Titans are playing in the Super Bowl, and hopefully that'll happen next year. But one thing that we want to make sure of is that we don't let drunk driving ruin Super Bowl Sunday. So the game plan is very simple. Number one, if you're planning to drink, have a ride. Have yourself set up with a designated driver, a ride service. Have a plan for how you're going to get home if you plan to drink. Number two, if you're hosting a party, talk to the people at your party about what their plans are to get home. Have a basis, have an understanding for how everyone who is going to drink is going to get home. In doing so, that game plan will allow you to say, this person, as they leave, I know they're safe, I know they're safe, keep account. And finally, don't be afraid to take away the keys from someone. It's one of the hardest things that most of us have ever done is stopped a friend or a family member, or in certain cases, people we don't know, and said, you're not driving. Maybe they give you a hard time at that moment, but how many times do they come back and thank you, and you know that you've probably prevented something by doing so. So have a plan for yourself, have a plan for the people around you, and don't be afraid to step forward and be aggressive in saying you're not going to get in the car. Let's make sure that drunk driving doesn't ruin Super Bowl Sunday. Thank you to everyone again for being here, and I'll turn it back over to Ariel.
Thank you. At this time, our next speaker is going to be the Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security, Jeff Long.
Good morning. Let me thank Mike Keith again for the dynamic advice he just gave everyone, and to the Tennessee Titans for hosting this morning. One of the main priorities of the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security is to ensure Tennesseans are safe and secure on our roadways. Super Bowl Sunday is no different. We value our state and our local law enforcement partnership and the support of Tennessee Titans organization. These partnerships are essential to our overall success of traffic safety education and enforcement. As a former assistant district attorney, a former sheriff, and now commissioner, I know the consequences of drinking and driving, how serious and how real they really are. But avoiding trouble is simple. If you drink, don't drive. We need the help of all Tennesseans to make sure that safe choices are made on our roadways, and if you plan to drink on Super Bowl Sunday, make the right play call and plan to have a designated driver. Enjoy the game and get home safety. Thank you.
Our next speaker at this time will be the Colonel of the Tennessee Highway Patrol, Derek Stewart.
Thank you. It's certainly good to be here today, and we certainly appreciate all of our safety partners being here with us this morning as we talk about our upcoming initiative for Super Bowl weekend. I also want to thank the Tennessee Titans organization for allowing us to have this event here. We have a great partnership with them, and we certainly appreciate their support. You know, over the years, the Super Bowl Sunday has really evolved into an unofficial national holiday. Whether your team is playing, or whether you're a diehard sports fan, or whether you're just in it for those great commercials, the social aspect of the Super Bowl is undeniable. The overwhelming majority of the people will be watching the big game with friends or family, or attending parties, or even hosting their own. Last year during Super Bowl weekend, our troopers cited more than 1,000 drivers for not wearing their safety belt. They removed 124 drivers from impaired drivers from the Tennessee roadways, and they investigated more than 1,400 crashes all across our state. 75 of those crashes involved individuals that had been drinking that was impaired. Unfortunately, 8 people lost their lives over the Super Bowl weekend last year. Now, that's just not 8 individuals, that's 8 families that's destroyed and devastated. And it's something that is totally preventable. It should not happen, and we're out all together collectively to ensure that it doesn't happen again. On Sunday, the football players will be taking every precaution to ensure their safety. They'll be wearing their shoulder pads. Most importantly, they'll be wearing their helmets. We need to do 3 things to keep ourselves and our roadways safe this weekend. 1, wear your safety belt. 2, don't drive distracted. And in the end, number 3, please do not drive impaired. Handing over your keys to a sober driver or using a taxi or ride-sharing service is always the right call. This is the winning game plan. To all of our designated drivers out there this weekend, I want to thank you because you are truly the most valuable players for this game this weekend. To my fellow Tennesseans, we need you to tighten up and team up with us, and working together, we can make the roadways safer, we can reduce crashes, and we can save lives all across Tennessee. We want everyone to have a great time this weekend, make good choices, and enjoy the game.
At this time, our next speaker is going to be the Wilson County Sheriff, Robert Bryan, speaking on behalf of the Tennessee Sheriff's Association.
Thank you, Ariel. I want to thank the Tennessee Titans for inviting the Tennessee Sheriff's Association to be involved in this process. On behalf of the Tennessee Sheriff's Association, we are partnering with our traffic safety partners for the Booze It and Lose It campaign during the Super Bowl weekend. Sheriffs across the state, along with city and other partners in this task, will be joining forces during the campaign in an effort to stop drunk driving and keeping them off the roadways of our states and across the roadways of our state. Every day, innocent people are losing their lives. People who choose to drive while being impaired. Most people who drive drunk believe that they are okay, but they're not. We ask people to be observant of people who appear to be intoxicated and do the right thing, take their keys. This Super Bowl weekend, there will be many social events across our state that typically involve alcohol. We want to stress to you that getting behind the wheel under the influence is an individual choice, and a choice that can not only forever change your life, but the lives of many. We stand by our partners today to help get the word out to everyone for this Super Bowl weekend. If you drink and drive, you will go to jail. Please be responsible and have a designated driver. That is important. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be the Smyrna Police Chief, Kevin Arnold, speaking on behalf of the Tennessee Association of Chiefs of Police.
Thank you. On behalf of all the chiefs and the municipal police departments across the state, thank you for having us here this morning. When I think back on Super Bowls of past, I think back, because I'm a huge football fan, so I think back on some really great games and unfortunately some mistakes like Jackie Smith dropping the ball in the end zone. I think back on a lot of things like that, and as you could tell, I also think back on chili and chicken wings and things like that. Super Bowl to me is a holiday. It really is. But unfortunately, across our state and even in this room, there are families that have been impacted that aren't thinking on things like that because people made the decision to have a few and then get behind the wheel impaired. So we stressed to all of our people across the state, if you decide, especially in this day and age, and please don't think for a moment this is an endorsement of a service, but in this day and age of Uber, Lyft, taxi, designated drivers, you have no reason whatsoever to get behind that wheel because I can assure you right now, police departments across the state are going to saturate their streets and they're going to be looking for you. If you decide, well, I think I can make it home, that's a strong, wrong decision on your part. Please don't drink and drive this weekend. Please use these services. Please rely on a friend. And if you're a friend and you see your friend doing the wrong thing, step in and do something about it. Thank you all very much.
As we know, drunk driving crashes are a national issue. These tragedies strike nationwide and impact families across various communities. Our next speaker, Jacqueline Marushka, is a Nashville-based entrepreneur from a small farming community of Velarde, New Mexico. She will share her story of how two drunk drivers impacted her life and her family. This New Mexico native came from humble beginnings. She paid for her college education, moved to Nashville in 1995, and was immediately noticed for her work ethic, creativity, and attention to detail. It wasn't long before she was recruited to work alongside names including Bruce Springsteen, Alan Jackson, Sony Music Entertainment and Sony Pictures, the Grammys, and the Academy Awards. She volunteers teaching yoga to foster children and now advocates for drunk driving prevention. Please welcome our guest speaker, Jacqueline Marushka.
Thank you, Ariel. Grandpa Mike knelt down. His emerald green eyes stared directly into mine as he took my tiny hands in his. Even at 4 years old, I sensed that what he was about to say would be very important. His usually strong voice softened as he said, "Mijita, I've crossed this road almost every day of my life. Never cross it without me or your grandma, and never cross any road without looking both ways, twice. ¿Me entiende?" "Yes, Grandpa, I understand." Grandpa Mike Martinez was born November 27th, 1917, in Velarde, which is a strip of rich farmland in northern New Mexico, nestled snugly in a valley through which the mighty Rio Grande River flows. The land was untouched relatively at the time and home to only a handful of families and one roughly graded country road that ran right through the center of the community. Grandpa Mike was the second youngest of 7 kids born to Ruperta and Pablo. The smart, disciplined, and responsible little boy attended Catholic school, after which every day he'd come home and tend to the chickens and the rabbits, and he learned carpentry from his father and 3 older brothers. During the summer months, the entire family piled into their farm truck, drove up the county road, out of Velarde, and into Greeley, Colorado, where they spent the following 3 months harvesting onions, beets, and cantaloupe on the farms of wealthy farm owners. wealthy landowners. Grandpa Mike took every opportunity to work, learn, and earn. When the harvest season was over, he worked at Los Alamos National Labs doing carpentry. And every single dime that he saved, that he earned, he saved inside of a hollowed out brick that he hid inside the chicken coop. On March 17th, 1942, Grandpa Mike married Grandma Sylvia. They used his savings, and together they built Mike's cash store and service station, THSO station, that is. It was the first filling station in our area. It was the first anything in our area. Grandpa Mike considered it an honor to contribute to our great and growing country, and he took pride in his image because he knew it reflected on his business, but mostly it reflected on his family name. Grandpa Mike was about 5'10", 165 pounds, olive skin, piercing green eyes, and teeth that gleamed when he smiled. He was up every morning at 4:30 sharp, stirring his red and ivory shaving brush in his cup of shaving soap, and he'd paint that froth across his chin and his cheeks, and he'd shave with a straight razor. He slapped on Old Spice aftershave and buttoned up his freshly starched uniform, ordered straight out of the THSO catalog. His THSO star patch sat at the right breast above his embroidered name, Mike. In his left breast pocket, he kept a tire pressure gauge, ink pens, chalk, a couple of pencils, and his small black plastic comb, which he ran from his widow's peak all the way to the nape of his neck, repeating that motion until every hair was in place. And he kept it that way with just a touch of Vitalis hair tonic. After tying his polished black work boots, he'd walk to the kitchen where Grandma Sylvia would be already making breakfast. The smells of tortillas, bacon, fried eggs, oatmeal, and strong coffee percolating beckoned him. Grandma kept a small yellow sugar bowl on the counter, and Grandpa Mike would scoop out about 5 or 6 healthy spoonfuls into his coffee. I can still hear him stirring. Tick, 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 tick. As he waited for his coffee to cool, he prayed. He prayed before every meal in Spanish. When he was done, he'd cross his forehead, his mouth, and his heart, asking God to bless his words, his thoughts, and his actions. When he was done eating, he'd take his dishes to the sink, and he'd kiss Grandma Sylvia on the cheek. It was the same routine, the same breakfast every single morning. Depending on the weather, he'd either get into his blue work truck or onto his 3-wheel ATV or his Ford tractor, and he'd cross that country road to check his orchard, pigs, and fences. He'd cross back over that country road again at about 6 a.m. to start his workday at the THSO station, changing oil, pumping gas, and fixing engines and tires. In 1964, the Department of Transportation paved over our country road, leaving a blacktop 4-lane in its wake. Grandpa Mike's store continued to serve everyone in our community, plus anyone passing through on that brand new 4-lane. Kids and grandkids came along, and when I was 9, I started working at Grandpa Mike's store during the summers and after school. I was a cashier, but I eventually earned the right to pump some gas. Fishermen, hunters, and tourists, river rafters, they all stopped by for everything from fishing worms and hot sandwiches to candies, chips, and cigarettes. No stop was complete without a few bottles of ice-cold Coca-Cola. Grandpa Mike taught me a lot while I helped out at the store. As a full-service station, it was customary to wash our customers' windshields and check their tire pressure. If the tire pressure was low, I'd offer to fill their tires according to the pressure required. At the end of the day, I'd gather up the hose and lock it into the air compressor cabinet. One day, after we closed the store, Grandpa Mike came in and asked me to come outside with him. He walked me to the air compressor cabinet and said, "Mijita, open the door to the cabinet." He handed me the key and I opened up the cabinet. He said, "What's wrong with the hose?" "I don't know." I was 9. He asked me to take the hose out of the cabinet. Well, I had a lot of trouble pulling the hose out of the cabinet because it was in knots. It was not put together right. He asked me when I was done untying the hose, was that difficult or was that easy? Well, I knew I'd disappointed him. So I stood there, mortified, learning a lesson. Okay, mijita, this is how you roll up a hose. With patience, grace, and kindness, he taught me how to roll the hose up, put it back in the cabinet, and said, always leave things better than you found them. Always. Grandpa Mike took great care of his things, and he extended that same respect to other people's property. One day, as I was washing a customer's car windshield, Grandpa Mike walked over to me and whispered, so not to embarrass me, mijita, don't lean up against the car. The buttons on your clothing could scratch their paint, and we want them to come back. He also said, always smile, thank them for their service, and never take tips. Other things I had to learn by trial and error. Like when a lady walked in to the store and asked for sanitary napkins. I confidently walked to the back of the store, grabbed a shrink-wrapped package for her, and brought it out to her, and she leaned over the counter and said, honey, these are dinner napkins. To which I replied, I assure you, ma'am, they're sanitary. When I was 15, Grandpa Mike was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and his radiation treatments were scheduled for that summer. Because I was on summer break, Grandpa Mike and Grandma Sylvia asked me if I'd be able to drive him into the big town of Santa Fe, the big city, 2 hours round trip. I was nervous because I'd just received my learner's permit. He looked at me, I'll never forget it, and he said, mijita, it's okay. I'm right here. You can do this. So, for the next 3 months, 3 times a week, I drove into the big city. I'd drive to St. Vincent's Hospital, walk him into the treatment area, and wait in the hospital waiting room. In these moments, memories were brought to mind of his kindness to others, regardless of who or what they were. Like one cold winter night, I saw him bring a wooden box inside from his workroom. He lined it with old towels and placed it by the wood-burning furnace. He left and came back with a baby bottle and something small wrapped in a blanket under his arm. It was his day-old runt piglet. He fed it with the bottle and waited with it through the night. He kept the fire going, and he slept in the chair next to the wood stove. He nursed that tiny piglet until it was healthy enough to return to its siblings. And now I had the opportunity to help nurse him back to health. When his treatments were done, I'd walk him to the lobby where he'd wait for me to get the car. We'd drive home, usually in silence. Those treatments made him really sick, but he never complained. Grandpa Mike beat cancer, and he went right back to work. He was our town's favorite person, the unofficial mayor of our little town, and everyone in our lush valley seemed to just depend on him. He helped remodel our community church, helped start our fire department, and was the chairman of our town's water system. People loved to visit with him as he filled their gas tanks and changed their oil. You can probably see that it was my Grandpa Mike who had the most influence on my life. I graduated with honors from the University of New Mexico, moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and have made a career as an entertainment publicist. When I stepped onto the red carpet at the Oscars in Hollywood for the first time, I found myself surrounded by famous movie stars. But all I could think of was one very special star, the THSO star that lit up Velarde, my hometown, that Grandpa Mike, the light of my life, built from the ground up. While I rocked the red carpet that evening, it dawned on me that Grandpa Mike would have already been in bed, resting up for the next morning's journey across that 4-lane to check his pigs, fences, and orchard just like he'd done every other day. As I made my way up the red carpet amid a wash of glitz, glamour, and cameras flashing, I heard him whisper, "Mijita, look both ways." Sometime before 9 a.m., November 20th, 1996, 52-year-old David Casca had already started drinking. David chose to get into his car at 3 times the legal limit. Around that same time, Grandpa Mike got onto his three-wheel ATV to check his orchard across that 4-lane. He waved goodbye to Grandma Sylvia and started up his little engine. At 10 a.m., David drove up the dirt road, past Grandpa Mike's orchard, and he crossed that 4-lane. When he did, he clipped the back of Grandpa Mike's ATV. David kept driving as Grandpa Mike laid motionless on that 4-lane. Grandpa Mike was life-flighted to a hospital 2 hours from Velarde, and he died the next day. I never got to say goodbye to Grandpa Mike. At his funeral, individuals from every corner of the country filled our little community church. Each one wept as they told stories about how Grandpa Mike had helped them. Some shared stories about the credit he'd given them on groceries or gas when they'd fallen on hard times, and others just recounted stories of how he'd gotten up in the middle of the night to help them change a tire up the road. And even still, others were migrant workers that he had given work to, even if he didn't necessarily need the help at the time. The list went on and on. David Goska had 7 prior DUI convictions. 7. He was charged with drunk driving and vehicular homicide and was sentenced to only 3 years. He didn't finish that sentence. He didn't even have to finish the 3 years. Our family, our town, we got a life sentence. Shortly after David murdered Grandpa Mike, the THSO star went out. After 56 years of marriage, Grandma Sylvia's broken heart could no longer hold on. The orchard withered away, and the spirit of our town left. Less than 4 years later, and only a mile up the 4-lane from where Grandpa Mike was killed, another drunk driver killed my Aunt Janelle. She was just 37 when a drunk pulled out in front of her. She left behind 2 innocent children and a husband. And you know what? That drunk driver was returning from court where he had just pled innocent to his 6th DUI charge.
This now concludes our press conference, and we're going to open the floor to media. Thank you, everybody, for attending.